Hi, welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. A lot of controversy over this upcoming sequester. I've talked about this with you repeatedly because it's important that you're able to see through the lies that are coming out of this administration about what the sequester means, because they are trying to scare the American people into believing that this represents a catastrophe of Armageddon-like proportions. Ladies and gentlemen, nothing will happen. It'll be a ripple. You won't even feel it. In fact, as I pointed out last week, if you run the numbers, even with the sequester, even if all of the sequester cuts, and they're not cuts, that's the point. They're not cuts. They're just a reduction in the rate of growth. We're going to grow at a slower rate than we would without the sequester. Even with the sequester, we are still going to spend more money this year than we spent last year, even if the sequester goes into effect. And I think what Barack Obama's doing, he knows that this is a nothing burger. He knows that. He's a smart enough guy to recognize that. So he knows that if the sequester actually goes into effect, people are going to hardly feel it. Now, what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to trot out some people who are victims of this thing and try to create this enormous backlash of sympathy, but they know that the American people aren't even going to notice it. There's going to be no noticeable impact of these sequester cuts. So what President Obama's got to do is to try to scare the Republicans into surrendering right now to get something out of them before it goes into effect, because then his bluff will be called. It will become evident to people that are paying attention that this was a nothing burger. There was nothing to fear here. This wasn't the end of the world. This wasn't Armageddon. Now, here are the clip number 3. Here's Pat Caddell, Doug Schoen. They are Democrat insiders. They are political strategists. They were both very active in the Clinton administration. And so they are on here talking about the sequestration and about the Republican response to this. Remember, as you listen to this, there is nothing to fear here in the sequestration. I'm looking at a piece from Byron York, and he's got the numbers on here that even military spending is going to grow. You're hearing from conservatives this fear. This is going to gut the military. It's going to eviscerate the military. He's looking here at a February publication, the Budget and Economic Outlook, fiscal years 2013 to 2023. This is from the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office. This is President Obama's budget office, the CBO. It outlines the increases in defense spending that will happen even with the various spending caps and sequestration cuts that are currently law. In 2014, federal spending will be $593 billion. 2015, $597 billion. 2016, $611 billion. 2017, $619 billion, and it keeps ratcheting up. So here's the point, ladies and gentlemen, don't let them lie to you. Even with sequestration, we are going to spend more money on national defense than we spent last year, and we will spend more money in every succeeding year for the next decade, even with the sequestration cuts. Now, with that in mind, let's listen to Pat Caddell and Doug Schoen talk about the sequester.
They're in just full surrender mode. I don't know whether you want to compare the Italian army or the French army. These people don't know how to fight. And first of all, you fight for something you believe in. They have had no narrative about what they feel, which I think is a party they feel, about where the country's headed economically in terms of the deficit. They don't talk, but I just said in the last segment, about the problems of ordinary people, what food inflation, gas prices, what this administration is doing. They never talk about ordinary people. Neither does the president. But the president attacks the rich, and they fall into this. He is so disingenuous because he keeps saying over and over what he knows is not true, but it's working, and that's what he wants.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's why you listen to Focal Point and AFR Talk. Even Pat Caddell, a Democrat, card-carrying Democrat, says this: the president keeps saying over and over what he knows is not true. What's he saying? He's saying that President Obama is lying to the American people. I mean, he's trying to be polite about it. He's saying over and over what he knows is not true. Now, when you say something that you know is not true, what do we call that? That is a lie. And here is a Democrat strategist, Pat Caddell, calling President Obama flat out a liar. But he's saying, look, it's working, and that's what he wants. He's got the Republicans in full surrender mode, despite the fact that the truth and the facts are on their side. There are not, in fact, going to be any cuts in government. There's going to be less growth in spending, but there are no cuts, no meaningful cuts. Now, here is, let me see, I got another story open here in front of me. This is on a blog called Hit and Run blog by Mike Riggs. And again, this is part of the scaremongering of the Obama administration. They've even got these draconian cuts as an example of the harm that sequestration is going to do for a government agency that doesn't even exist. And Mike Riggs has gone to page 121 of the Office of Management Budget's September 2012 report, and it says that under sequestration, the National Drug Intelligence Center would lose $2 million of its $20 million budget. So this is supposed to scare the Republicans. We've got to have intelligence on drug trafficking and the drug trade. We've got to stop we've got to stop the damage that drugs are doing to our culture. The only problem is, and so it's going to lose $2 million. It's going to lose 10% of its operating budget. The only problem is it doesn't even exist. It closed down on June 15 of 2012. So it's just an example of all the scaremongering and the hype coming out of this administration. Here's a piece on American Spectator by Matt Purple. What the Obama administration did is they ran out a bunch of numbers showing the devastating impact on every state in the union. They included Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. And here's what Matt has to say, Matt Purple. President Obama yesterday released a guide of how each state will be affected. He's putting particular emphasis on education cuts. As the Washington Post darkly warns, the Washington area would be hit hard. And then he looks at the actual numbers. According to the president's itemized hysterics, the district will lose $533,000 as a result of the sequester. Washington currently budgets $805 million for public schools. That means the meat cleaver sequester would lop off a whopping 0.006% of Washington's public schools budget. Then he goes to Virginia, runs the numbers. It'll reduce their rate of growth by 0.02%. Maryland, same deal, 0.02%. In other words, it's a nothing burger. Now, another way they're trying to scare Republicans, apparently, this is on the Washington Post, and I don't know what he was hoping to accomplish by this. I mean, I think the average grassroots Americans out there say, well, hey, this is a reason to do it. This is a reason for the sequester. But the head of the Air Force is out there today saying, hey, look, if the sequester goes into effect, the military might have to eliminate their freebie flights for congressmen. Right now, members of Congress get to fly on Air Force jets, especially when they travel overseas. There's no security lines. Check-in is a breeze. Service couldn't be better. It's business class only. And the head of the Air Force is saying, hey, all that may come to a screeching halt. In other words, congressmen, if this sequester goes into effect, your poor, beleaguered congressman might have to fly on commercial airlines just like the peasants do, just like you do, just like the citizen class has to do, and we can't have that. Oh, the humanity. Now, John Carl, ABC News is even on to Barack Obama on this. John Carl, ABC, has a piece today. The Obama administration's list of what will happen if upcoming spending cuts go into effect is downright terrifying. In recent days, officials have warned of more forest fires, workplace deaths, and heaven forbid, chicken shortages. And today, the White House brought out Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood to warn of big air travel delays across the country as air traffic controllers are forced off the job because of budget cuts. LaHood even suggested that some smaller airports might have to reduce hours of operation or even temporarily close. And then John Carl, ABC News, digs into the numbers, and this is what he found. The Department of Transportation's budget for 2013 is $74.2 billion. The automatic spending cuts would slice $1 billion out of its budget. That is a cut of less than 1.4%. Okay, so it sounds like a cut. It's going to cut at 1.4%. It's going to cut at $1 billion. It's horrible. But then he does this. Consider this, John Carl says. Even if the cuts go into effect, the Department of Transportation will spend more money this year, $73.2 billion, than it spent last year, $72.6 billion. So here's the deal. Last year, the Department of Transportation spent $72.6 billion. The budget for 2013, $74.2 billion. So it was going to go up. What is that, $1.6 billion? You lop $1 billion out of that, they're still going to spend $600 million more this year than they spent last year. If you're going to spend $600 million more than you spent last year, and nobody lost their job last year, and airports still had their full complement of air traffic controllers, how in the world is the world going to come to an end this year when you get to spend $600 million more than you spent last year? And that's why I just want to make the point. All of this, it's just scare tactics. It's hype. It's hysteria. The sequester, if it goes into effect, is an absolute nothing burger. You and I won't feel a ripple. We won't even notice it, and President Obama knows that. But he's trying to spook the Republicans into raising taxes. Remember, Barack Obama says it's got to be a balanced approach, And balance to him means tax increases. And the Republicans, to their credit, have said, look, you've got the last tax increase out of us you are going to get. And so Barack Obama is trying to scare them into backing away from that pledge by warning America the roof will cave in if we don't get more tax increases by March 1. Back with more Focal Point AFR Talk. Stay with us.